Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we're so glad to have you here. Coming up on the show today, New Jersey election officials have removed more than 5,000 voter registrations after an MVC software error improperly sent non-citizen information into the state's voter system. We'll discuss what happened and what is next. We'll also talk about growing concerns over a possible cancer cluster in Keyport, where state environmental and health agencies have expanded testing. State Senator Declan O'Scanlon joins us later in the show. But first, Congresswoman Analilia Mejia is already making waves in her first month representing New Jersey's 11th congressional district, introducing legislation to raise the federal minimum wage and taking on a number of high-profile issues. Today, she'll be discussing her priorities in Congress and the ongoing situation at Delaney Hall in Newark. Congresswoman, welcome. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you. It's so lovely to join you today.
All right, so you have passed 100 days in the House. How's it going? Was it fast? What surprised you the most about Congress? And, how is it really shaping the way you approach the job for New Jersey's 11th district?
Well, and again, thank you for having me on. I've been in office for 100 days. In that time, I have been able to, of course, join my colleagues on critical votes around housing, around this war that the president has dragged us into. I've introduced over 80 bills. I've helped kick off a task force, but I think the most important thing I've been doing is getting to better know my constituents and community. I've lived in my community for over 12 years. I've raised my family here, but it is such an honor and a privilege to get to know the residents of New Jersey's 11th congressional district. Our towns are amazing, and I think that has been the most rewarding part of these first 100 days.
Yeah. Well, you've been very busy. You introduced the Living Wage for All Act in your first week, and it has been introduced in the Senate. So let's talk about it. $25 an hour. So why 25 an hour? And how do you respond to critics who say, well, that figure just isn't realistic, or it could harm small businesses in the district?
Well, first, I'll remind folks that the proposal that we have put forward essentially would bring workers to a $25 minimum wage over time, similar to what we did in New Jersey as we raised our minimum wage to 15 years ago. As folks know, these kind of policies, when they're instituted in a way that raise the floor for everyone, but do it in a systematic way, in order to not destabilize small businesses or business altogether, actually improves our economy. When people have more money in their pockets, they have a tendency to engage in our economy more robustly. The reason we picked 25 is because as many workers, as many New Jerseyans know, most certainly in New Jersey's 11th, there isn't a corner in the United States. There isn't a district in the United States in which making less than $25 an hour can actually sustain a family. When you're talking about spending upwards of $25,000 a year on childcare, when health insurance costs have tripled, when gasoline prices are through the roof, then you know that we need to do more than try to bring those prices down. We need to also put more money in people's pockets. That's what this proposal is. And it follows a very smart step ladder that we did in New Jersey and, in fact, helped our economy.
Well, on the topic of constituents, whether you're hearing from somebody at Randolph, Belleville, what are the specific needs that you're hearing from them, and how are you translating that into action?
Affordability is a big one. Affordability, there is an affordability crisis, and we see the obvious aspects of it. The rising gasoline costs, which makes it harder for individuals to both get to work or to be part of a thriving economy. I've also heard a lot from caregivers, people in particular who are in this sandwich generation, caring for children, caring for elderly parents. They're watching cuts to Medicaid and different safety net programs really impact them and impact their parents and their children. And it is quite heartbreaking. I've been able to visit federally qualified health centers who have shared that they have seen an increase in individuals who are showing need. You have food banks who are showing an increase in people showing up in a needy state. And, again, I think that it is important that our elected officials are really focused on the bread and butter issues, the things that keep people up at night. I know as a mom that lives in this community, raising children, caring for a mother who has dementia, trying to be active in my community, these things keep my husband and I up at night. And so I think about my friends and neighbors with every vote I take.
Admittedly, in that same kind of a spot, I have kids going off to college, some with challenges, parents with healthcare memory issues, and trying to balance all of this while you're still trying to, work. People are still trying to work in that sandwich. It is overwhelming under the best of circumstances, and you don't always know how to navigate what resources are available, because there are resources available, but it seems that there's so much red tape that you have to cut through that people give up. And then people aren't being cared for the way that they should be. They've been tax paying into a system, and they're not getting necessarily what they need. So it's really, really difficult. And that, at the end of the day, I would imagine you hear a lot from your constituents just about, it's hard for me to pay bills, let alone I'm trying to take care of people on these, that sandwich generation.
Yes, I mean, again, I think when we bring our lived experience to these halls of power, I think we come up with better policy decisions. There is, I don't know if your viewers know, there is approximately 7% of our congressional members are moms with school-aged children. It's in there are many reasons for it: the difficulty of the job, the distance that one has to travel. But being able to bring that experience to the halls of Congress, I think, is so impactful and so important. When I'm thinking about childcare issues, when I'm thinking about safety issues, when I'm thinking about how to hold corporations accountable to our families, I'm not willing to undermine our communities or shortchange our communities, because I am part of the fabric of this district. I know what it means to try to, again, be a contributing member of both society and our economy, trying maybe two households, or two worker households, where you have children and elderly parent caregiving responsibilities. And again, our government should really be focused on the daily lives of the American people. I know that's what I bring to Congress.
Another thing, you're co-chair of the Defend the 14th Amendment Task Force. So can you talk a little bit about what you're doing, concrete steps this group is taking to do things, protect due process, equal protection, birthright citizenship, in response to some of the actions taken by the administration and recent court decisions?
Yeah, so it's, as my career has been in both training and outreach, civic engagement, and building democratic institutions, and policymaking. It's the behind the scenes work that makes our government function. And one of the things that I've learned, I've noticed, is that, at the core of many of the things that we hold dear in our nation, the core of many of the freedoms that we love, the right to marry whom you choose, bodily autonomy, the right to form a union and collectively bargain. So many of these critical rights and responsibilities that our Constitution richly gives us are in fact contained or anchored in the 14th Amendment. And I have also noted in the last few years a systematic encroachment on those protections. And it matters to everyone, whether or not you are an undocumented undocumented person in this country or 5 generations in, birthright citizenship matters to you because our Constitution says no one in our nation will be born or will be born without equal rights, that everyone born on this nation is equal and free. It matters to everyday people that we have due process and equal protection, and we must uphold it, particularly for the most vulnerable, because we know that if we allow the encroachment of those rights for one group, we have in fact allowed them to be siphoned away from others. This is some basic civic engagement, social studies kind of level understandings, but it is clear that we have, in my opinion, an ideologically captured Supreme Court that is willing to go along with extremists, unfortunately, at the highest levels of our government. And in my opinion, we are losing rights that are important not only to us, but generations out. So this campaign, this task force is about education. It's about an analysis of how these rights have been encroached upon so that we could create a roadmap for how we rebuild and strengthen our constitutional protections. I think it's important for every individual, not just eighth graders, but myself, my peers, to all be really focused on what our Constitution says, what it allows us, and to defend it as we must.
Before we run out of time, I wanted to touch on one other topic. I know it's a difficult, a very complicated topic, but I want to get to it before we say goodbye. And it's how critical, you've been very highly critical on the conditions at Delaney Hall, visiting the facility, questioning DHS leadership, and also joining with fellow Democrats in demanding answers after a third death is connected to the center. So can we just briefly talk on that before our time ends here? What are you seeing? What questions are you asking? And what type of accountability and actions are you looking for?
Well, in my very first week, I went into Delaney Hall and made a point to look at the conditions and see for myself if what was coming out from the families from detained individuals was in fact true. And sadly, some of my worst fears were confirmed. One of the first things that I noticed, though, in that very first visit was I expressed concerns about the way in which the health care is provided for, in particular, the chronically ill, pregnant women, people with cancer, people who require a level of medical care, of medication oversight in order to stay healthy. The reason this really matters to me is more than an immigration issue. What I want your viewers to understand is that these individuals are under government custody. And if these individuals are being treated in a way in which they're effectively could be being handed a death sentence because their medications aren't given correctly, or they're not confirmed with their medical providers, they're getting critical medication either sporadically or they don't even know what they're being handed. This is dangerous because then our government is proving that they could mistreat a group of people. I believe that we have to uphold, at all of the levels of our government. We have to uphold all of the rights that we are afforded so that they are not siphoned away for ourselves and for future generations. Those that are detained have a right to due process and equal protection because of our Constitution. It behooves us to protect those processes because we want to retain them for ourselves. And it is important that if we have medically vulnerable people, that our government is not only taking care of them, but that they're not playing these political games like they did recently, changing their rules on when they must disclose a death that occurs in a 30-day window after detention, to eliminating that process. And now we are learning through the rumor mill that individuals have been released and then immediately have lost their lives, and therefore making it difficult for us to hold ourselves accountable. This matters to every American. This matters to every individual, irrespective of your immigration status or philosophy.
Congresswoman, you have a very full plate, and we're so thankful that you took time out of your schedule
Always,
to come talk to us. And we'd love to have you back on to follow up on some of these very important, very significant issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to you and your viewers.
Thank you. Welcome back. State officials in New Jersey have deleted about 5,100 voter registrations after an MVC software error improperly added non-citizens to the rolls. Another 1,450 cases are still under review. But that's not the only thing making news. Residents in Keyport are demanding answers about a possible cancer cluster as state agencies ramp up testing. Joining me now to discuss that is State Senator Declan O'Scanlon from Monmouth County. Senator, welcome. Good to see you.
Hi, Laura. It's good to see you, too. Thanks for having me.
Well, it has not been a dull summer. Governor Mikey Sherrill got out there and said, hey, listen, the voters' registration, we know there was an MVC software error. Should not have happened. We're taking steps to fix things. Do you believe the action on the Sherrill administration is fully addressing the problem, or do you have questions that are still unanswered?
Actually, it's not what I think. We know they're not fully addressing the problem. We know that there are voters outside the time window that they have delineated and very rigidly delineated, which I think is foolish. We know we have hard evidence that there are voters who didn't belong on the rolls registered outside of that window. We also know that the software is flawed, that they're continuing to use. So you have this instance that they're talking about where people said they were not citizens or were not eligible to vote and were put on the rolls automatically without having to do anything. We know that the way the system is set up, people can choose to register to vote. They can choose to say they're citizens. It's an honor system. How many people are doing that? So we believe this is the tip of the iceberg and that we need to go much further in this investigation.
When it comes down to how was this last vote affected, about 400 people who shouldn't have voted did vote, right? Is that about the numbers that you're hearing?
That's
right.
That's what the administration is saying. Yes.
Right. So it didn't necessarily sway. There could be some areas, where it does come down. But one vote that shouldn't have voted is too much. So
it
can you
gets
just,
right to the integrity of our whole voting system. And it needs to be something that the sanctity of which is guarded vigilantly. That has not happened.
So you have the Senate Minority Leader, Anthony Bucco, is calling for a bipartisan select committee with subpoena powers, saying, hey, that these non-citizens that were registered, other than other non-citizens may have been registered through methods other than the MVC, right? So it's not just MVC, and that would be a 2-year window. So do you support this type of independent investigation?
I do. There's no question we should have such an investigation. And to not do so suggests that they're not taking it seriously. There should be an investigation at the legislative level with subpoena powers, number one. There also should be convened a bipartisan group of elections officials who understand these systems and know how to fix it. This is not rocket science. There's ways that we can absolutely without question, prevent people that are not eligible from ending up on our voter rolls. It wouldn't be hard. The state is just reluctant to do it. And that sends a really awful message to the public. Both of those things should happen. They should happen immediately. The governor has indicated that she would support voter ID as well. That's a reform that should happen tomorrow, certainly in time for the elections this fall. All of these things should happen. And should happen quickly, and they're not, because the administration isn't taking this as seriously as they should.
You bring up voter ID, right? A very divisive subject. What I found interesting, I had to take one of my kids to urgent care. That child forgot their ID. Urgent care said, sorry, we can't help you. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? They're like, didn't bring ID. This child is over 18. My son's over 18. And I was like really surprised. And then it kind of got to, wow, like I'm not able to get medical care because he forgot an ID. You got to either go back home and get it or go to the emergency room, which costs more money. But that kind of goes to why are people so opposed? Why is that such a divisive issue? Showing an ID, showing a voter ID when you go to vote.
There's no reason for it to be divisive.
Why has it become so partisan and so, so explosive?
You have to ask. Because it would not disenfranchise any voters. Let's be clear on that. The suggestion is that really what the left is saying is that some poor folks, some other not particularly sophisticated folks aren't smart enough to figure out how to get an ID. And that's just garbage. Everybody has an ID. It's very easy to get an ID. And it would solidify, again, the sanctity of our elections. Why would you argue against that unless you were for, perhaps, permitting some people that shouldn't vote to vote? That's the only argument against voter ID. And that really betrays the logic and the intent of the people arguing against it. It's pretty horrific, actually.
Yeah, I mean, getting real ID in New Jersey is not easy, though. All the points of identification. In fact, it's sometimes harder to get like an ID than it is a passport. But then if you have that, then you can getting that as opposed to voter ID are two different things, though.
Yeah, you can get a very simple. You don't need a real ID to get
Right.
to be able to vote, as long as it's
Right.
some sort of identification
Right.
issued by some government entity. You're good to go. But at the very least, we should have that. It's a glaring hole in our system that again would be easy to fix. But the people in charge so far haven't cared enough about the sanctity of our elections to want to bother to
Yeah.
make that happen.
Well, I want to talk about some of the fixes, but again, the state is saying, this was a software failure. This isn't deliberate fraud. And the people who were affected actually had said that they weren't citizens, but there's still a lot of people who it doesn't take a lot to shake their faith. They don't trust the government to begin with. So when you talk about steps, what specific steps should the MVC, elections, legislature, what can they take to restore trust ahead? Because we've got an election coming up in November.
Republicans have a number of bills, voter ID being one of them, which would not necessarily solve this, but the software that's being used needs to be thoroughly looked at from end to end and make sure that this can't happen. And it would be easy to fix. I spoke with the people that made the software. They made it according to the specifications given to them by the folks at MVC. And the order of asking questions, for instance, you see a slide first that says, would you be interested in voting? It is after that you're asked whether you're a citizen or whether you're eligible to vote. And there's nothing in the system that makes it absolutely clear that to answer or dishonestly about any of these things, that it's a federal crime. What should happen is you should be asked if you're a citizen, and the MVC worker, once the person is presenting as a non-eligible to vote person, should make sure you go down a path that doesn't even let you get anywhere near registering to vote.
Right.
That'd be easy to do.
So
It's just a
simply
matter
by
of will to
flipping the
do it.
questions, just, are you a citizen? Yes, no. If it's no, well, then you're not even asked that question. Therefore, you
don't even see the screen. That's exactly right.
And is
That's
that
what should
something that can happen, or is it not happening? Like
That is absolutely something can happen. It is not something that is happening, and it should be. We should suspend registration that uses this software within the bounds of federal law, because federal law mandates that you make voting, registering to vote at places like MVC. But within the bounds of that law, we need to suspend this until it's fixed. And it shouldn't take long to fix.
Right. I'm not a technology expert. You would think it would be, but then again, the steps of government, and there are supposed safeguards in place, that should have prevented it. It didn't. We could probably talk about this the entire rest of the segment, but I want to talk to another thing making headlines in Keyport. You and your colleagues recently issued a statement regarding acknowledging a growing concern amongst residents about a reported cancer cluster. What can you what updates do you have? Have you received anything from the Department of Environmental Protection, Department of Health? What is going on? How transparent has that process been so far?
It's been pretty good. There's a lot of work to do, but we were on with DEP and Department of Health within 10 minutes after this story breaking. This is in Keyport, and there's an old closed landfill there, an industrial complex that has never been properly cleaned up, and it sat there for decades. We now have what appears to be evidence of a cancer cluster. And my constituents, quite frankly, are terrified and realistically, unfortunately, terrified. And we've got to get to the bottom of it. DEP has been fully engaged. We've had them out there. They've already done a batch of testing. We're waiting for the formal results of that testing to come back. We have to figure out exactly what's there and how it might be getting and harming my constituents. We got to get to the bottom of it. DEP is very active. I'm on regularly with the DEP commissioner. He's been very responsive. The health commissioner as well. The health departments, their interaction will come once we finish the testing. But they're already talking to residents and mapping this out. So government is fully engaged right now. We need to see it through. There's been fits and starts in the past and nothing ever got resolved. It needs to under our watch. And we are working diligently to make sure that happens.
Final thoughts as we're running out of time. If somebody has a question, concern about this, cancer cluster, where can they go? What's your best advice on getting information? Do you have anybody in constituent services who's able to help direct people on the right path?
Yeah, we do. They can reach my office via email. They can reach my office with a phone number. It's very easy. You look it up. Declan O'Scanlon Senate office. It's right there in one button. And we're here and happy to help point folks in the direction of testing, healthcare, information. We're totally transparent. And part of our job is to make sure that people get that information. And we're doing it every day.
Senator Declan O'Scanlon, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me very much.
And that'll do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.